Please be seated. Good morning. We're on the record. Case number 12 CF 1083A, State versus George Zimmerman. Good morning. Okay, are we ready to bring the jury in?
Judge, may we approach the bench and just do procedural matters
Yes.
very quickly?
Oh, well. Tell them to wait 1 second. We want to check on the availability of a witness. Is it? Okay, we can bring him in.
Jerry Fred, Your Honor.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Please be seated. Welcome back. During the overnight, I'm going to ask you my questions. If any of your answers to my questions are yes, please raise your hand. During the overnight recess, did any of you have any conversations with each other or with anybody else about the case? No hands are being raised. Did any of you read or listen to any radio, television, or newspaper reports about the case? No hands are being raised. Did any of you use an electronic device to get on the internet to do independent research about the case? People, places, things, or terminology? No hands are being raised. And finally, did any of you read or create any emails, text messages, Twitters, tweets, blogs, or social networking pages about the case? No hands are being raised. Thank you very much. Mr. Manti, you may call your next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. Please, the court state called Greg McKenny.
Do you solemnly swear from the testimony presented will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. McKenny, if you would, please go ahead and introduce yourself to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury. Tell them who you are, where you work, and what you do.
Okay, my name is Greg McKenny. I work for United Security Alliance. We're a nationwide system integrators of video surveillance and access control. And I work in the IT department there.
How long have you been there?
Over about a year and a half.
You mentioned U.S. Security Alliance and video surveillance. Tell me in English what all that stuff does. What do you do?
Well, video CCTV is to go ahead and monitor for security reasons. Okay. What we do is we have cameras out there to monitor surveillance, and then we have access control, which is like your card systems to get in the building.
Now, where is your company based?
Tampa, Florida.
All right. And that's where you go to work?
Yes.
Does your company monitor video surveillance systems from places outside Tampa, Florida?
Yes, we're nationwide.
Does that include the Retreat at Twin Lakes Clubhouse community here in Sanford, Florida?
Yes, sir.
If I may approach you on? Yes. Mr. McKenny, I'll show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 185, at least at this point in time. Is part of what you do to review and download video surveillance from these types of systems?
Yes, sir.
Do you do that remotely?
Yes.
And tell me how that happens.
What we do is we connect over the internet to the DVRs that are on site, and then we go ahead and we can view the cameras there, and then we can download the video too.
Okay. And were you asked to do that specifically as it relates to an incident occurring at the Retreat at Twin Lakes, February 26th of 2012?
Yes.
All right. And if I could direct your attention up here, this is a portion of State's Exhibit 1, which is already in evidence. It's an aerial view of that clubhouse. You familiar with that layout?
Yes, I am.
Okay. How many cameras does your company monitor at the Retreat of Twin Lakes Clubhouse?
9.
All right. Were there also cameras located at least physically at the front gate area of the complex?
Yes, sir.
And what did we learn about those cameras, at least as of February 26, 2012?
They were not functioning because it looked like a mower hit the cables.
Okay. Mr. McKenny, did you...
Could you repeat?
I said the front gate cameras were not functioning because there was it looked like a mower hit the PVC pipe that was leading to it. Had the cables in there.
As far as the videos from the clubhouse, were you able to download all the known video surveillance from a period of time on that day?
Yes, sir.
And so that would be for all 9 cameras?
Yes.
And is that what is depicted in State's Exhibit 185?
Yes, sir.
And there are 2 discs associated with State's Exhibit 185. What is the second disc?
One is labeled copy, and the other one is the video clips pulled from the original data.
The one that's labeled copy, is that the full original data?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and then the other one is just clips from that same disc?
Correct.
Your Honor, if there's no objection, I will be moving statements to 2085 and evidence. This next number is it?
Approach for a moment.
Yes, you
Could
may.
go on. Just a moment for a review, if I might, Your Honor.
Yes, you may. You're welcome. Is there any objections to the introduction of Exhibit 185?
No, Your Honor, that's including both videos as one exhibit?
Correct, it's composite.
Composite.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, the composite exhibit will come in as states 185.
Thank you, Your Honor. All right, Mr. McKinney, back to resume. We were discussing the cameras that you located in the video footage that you download, which is now depicted in State's Exhibit 185. What did you learn about the time on the video footage?
The video footage is actually 18 minutes off approximately.
Okay, and is that slow?
Yes,
So whatever time is depicted on the video, you actually have to add 18 minutes to, and that gets you to the accurate time?
that's correct.
Okay, and that's just the way the system was recording?
Yes.
Okay. As far as the camera locations, you mentioned there were 9. I want to talk about 2 in particular. Are there cameras both interior and exterior to the clubhouse?
Yes, sir.
I want to talk about the interior, in particular one that's called a kitchen camera. You're familiar with the clubhouse and where that camera is located?
Yes.
Okay. If I were to draw up here on State's Exhibit 1, is that kitchen camera right about in this area of the clubhouse on the inside?
Yes, it is.
And which way does it face?
It faces the front,
So it faces out this way,
right out the window.
and that street is Retreat View Circle?
That's correct.
Okay. Are there also,
That's not Exhibit 1.
this is a, I'm sorry, it's not
But you said states Exhibit 1, it may confuse the record.
my mistake. This is the aerial view of the retreat at Twin Lakes, and this is particularly a zoomed in on the clubhouse. I thought it was, the original was State's Exhibit 1.
Referred to as 1A.
Well, it's just a blown up section of
You
it.
need to put that on the record.
Right, right, if it's a blown-up section of Exhibit 1A,
That's what it is.
okay, thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. Exterior cameras. Is there one that's called the East Pool Hall camera? Is
Yes,
there also a West Pool Hall?
of course.
And is that because there's a hall between the building and the pool?
Yes.
Okay. Is the East Pool Hall camera located outside the building over in this vicinity?
Yes.
And its direction of view, I guess, would be this way?
Correct.
All right. This little thing here, what is that?
Is that the mailboxes?
Mailbox, Clint?
Yes.
So the camera actually faces that direction,
Yes.
and this would be Twin Trees Lane?
Correct.
The clips that you referenced from State's Exhibit 185, Mr. McKinney, I'm going to first show you what we talked about as the kitchen video. Is this what we're talking about?
Yes.
So we're looking out onto Retreat View Circle from the interior of the clubhouse with the kitchen camera?
That's correct.
Right. And the time on it appears to be 18:50 and 33 seconds at the point we're beginning here, but you said you need to add 18 minutes to that?
Yes.
So it's actually 19:08 and 33 seconds thereabouts,
Yes.
which is, all right, Mr. McKinney, was that something we just saw go by that window? Something?
I would object. Improper foundation for any opinion evidence by this witness. He's here as a records custodian.
Sustained.
All right, Mr. McKinney, the next view was the East Pool Hall camera. And is this the view from that camera?
Yes, it is.
All right, and so the mailbox kiosk, I guess, would be out here?
Right.
Okay, Mr. McKinney, I'm going to back up, and I just want to publish this one more time from the beginning. Anything else? And Mr. McKinney, I guess that the time beginning for this tape is depicted in the lower right-hand corner. Down there. Let me circle it.
Yes, that's
Okay, and that's the you'd have to add 18 minutes to that one as well?
correct.
Thank you. No other questions, Your Honor?
Cross,
Yes, thank
do you want the
you.
lights
No,
on?
no, thank you. Good morning, sir.
Morning.
Were you working for this company back in February of 2012?
Yes.
Okay. When was it that you actually did the work that you're now talking about of distilling out this information onto a disk?
I did it the day afterwards, and then approximately, I think it was 3:21, I was asked to get the record, get it again.
Okay. Previous to this event happening, had you ever been to this area?
No.
So you know that's a pool because it looks a lot like one?
Well, I've been there just the other day, yesterday.
Just recently?
Yes.
When was that?
Last night.
Oh, and that was at the request of the state
Yes.
to go familiarize yourself with the area
Correct.
to testify here today?
Correct.
Before yesterday, you've never been there?
Right.
Okay, so you just sort of identified, familiarized where those cameras were?
Mm-hmm.
And how, I'm sorry,
Yes, sir.
okay. Are they identified at your remote location by sort of a number or a location so that you know where to look here?
They're identified by name.
Okay.
East Pool, West Pool.
When was it that you realized that there was a malfunction with the timing mechanism?
The 28th, we had a service technician on site
28th
of February.
of 2012?
Correct.
And any idea, any explanation how your system would be 18 minutes off?
That's just the nature of computers and clocks like that. They drift.
Okay. And you said approximately?
Yes.
You don't know exactly?
Not this time, no.
Okay. Could have been 19 minutes, for example?
I would say, within, several seconds of 18 minutes.
18 minutes dead on, or 18 minutes 30 seconds, or
Yeah, I'd say within 15 or so either way.
so a total span of some 30 seconds?
Yeah, that's just guess.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, I'm just guessing there.
No, let's not guess.
Okay,
If you
well, I don't know then is the
Okay,
answer.
So if you don't know, I don't want you to
Okay.
guess. So
No, but that's the answer then. No, I
What-
don't know.
okay, so you don't know how far off it is, but somewhere around 18 minutes.
Correct.
Could be 19? Could be 17?
Possibly. Yeah. That'd be a guess, so.
Okay. Since we started with guessing, it could be 17 minutes, it could be 19 minutes, correct?
I don't know.
Okay. And do you know if this was a sort of concern that kept going, like it would lose a second an hour so that it might be a lot more, or was it a consistent, or do you even know that?
I don't know how long it lost it or the drift speed.
Okay. So actually, it could have been even several minutes more than that if there was just some malfunction, for example, that just happened and it was getting worse, so that by the time you retrieved it 2 days later, it was 18 minutes, but could have been 25, and it was just moving to the point of 18 when you caught it?
That'd be speculation. I don't know.
Okay. You have nothing to support any other contention, though, do you?
Right. I just know at the time I checked it, it was 18 minutes off.
Okay. All right. Thanks. Nothing further, Your Honor. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Any redirect?
No, thank you, Your Honor. Ask you to be excused.
Mr. McKinney, you may be excused. Thank you, sir. Call your next witness, please.
Okay, we call John Good.
Do you solemnly swear from the testimony presented will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
You may proceed.
Good morning, sir. Could you state your name for the record?
Jonathan Good.
Your last name is spelled G-O-O-D, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Are you married, sir?
Yes.
How long have you been married?
Might get in trouble for saying this. Little over a year.
Okay. And do you have any kids?
No.
Okay. What do you do for a living? What business are you in?
I work in finance.
Okay. And how long have you been in that line of work?
6 years.
Can you briefly tell us about your educational background, sir?
I'm an FSU graduate.
I'm not going to ask you for your current address, but are you currently living in Seminole County, Florida?
Yes.
I want to draw your attention back to February of last year, February of 2012. Were you living at a townhouse at Retreat Twin Lakes, specifically the address being 1221 Twin Tree Lane?
Yes.
Okay. And is that a townhouse that has bedrooms upstairs and then living quarters downstairs?
Correct.
At that time in February of 2012, when you were living there, how long had you been living there about?
3 or 4 years.
If you could, if you enter into your residence back in February of 2012 at Twin Tree Lane, when you come in, what do you enter into?
Well, it depends on if, are you talking about the house?
I apologize, the house. Yes, sir, I apologize.
You come in right past the bathroom and then the downstairs living quarters.
Okay. And are the stairs, where would they be located in that residence?
As soon as you make your way through the tile by the bathroom, you go right and the stairs are on the right.
Okay. And towards the back exterior of the house, is there a living quarters, meaning like a living room or dining room combination?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a sliding glass door that goes out into your backyard?
Yes.
Do you have a back porch, or I should say back in February, did you have a back porch of that residence?
I guess it would be considered a back porch, yes.
Okay. Tell us what you mean when you say consider a back porch.
It's just a slab of concrete with 2 pillars on each side.
All right. And so you don't actually have a screened-in porch or anything?
No.
It's just a slab of concrete, you open the glass door and you step out and there's concrete?
Correct.
And if you were to step out, then in the backyard, is there a walkway that separates, I guess, your yard and then the yard from the townhomes across from you?
Yes.
Okay. On your sliding glass door, were there any blinds at all back in February of 2012 there, specifically on February 26, 2012?
Yes.
Tell us, if you could, about those blinds.
They were always closed.
Okay. And the blinds, what type of blinds are they? Just regular blinds, or are they any special?
Junky white tall blinds.
Okay. Are they vertical or horizontal?
Vertical.
Okay. And when you say they're closed, meaning the whole sliding glass door, you could not see out into your backyard?
Correct.
And was that back in February 2012 just on purpose, or?
Yes.
Okay. Let's focus on that February 26, 2012. Were you home that evening, sir?
Yes.
And at around 7:05, 7:10, 7:15, around that time, were you home with your wife that time?
Yes.
Okay. What were you all doing?
Watching TV.
Okay. And there might be more than one TV in the residence. Was it downstairs in the living room?
Yes.
Okay. If you could kind of explain to the jury the layout of the living room, do you have a recliner, sofa, and where were you, as best you can recall, where were you and where was your wife?
We were sitting on the couch against the left side of the wall. The kitchen's on the right. It's an L-shaped couch, and we were just watching the TV from there with the sliding glass door being on our left.
So if you were watching the TV, the sliding glass door would be to your left?
Correct.
Okay. And at some point while you were watching TV, I guess I should ask you, when you were watching TV, do you recall what program you were watching?
No.
Was the volume up, or some people watch it muted? Was the volume up?
We could hear the TV.
Okay. And in terms of how loud it was, do you recall at this time how loud it was?
No.
Okay. Did you hear some noise outside?
Yes.
Okay. And was the noise you heard outside such that you were able to hear it inside? In other words, was it loud, or do you recall, in terms of describing it to the jury, the noise that when you first heard it?
It was faint.
Okay. And in terms of where the noise was coming from in relation to your backyard, can you say it was coming from, if you were looking out the backyard, to the left, to the right, front, or could you tell?
No, I could not tell.
When you first heard the faint noise, what did you think in terms of what was going outside, or did you have an impression as to what was going outside?
The first time we heard something, I didn't think anything of it.
Okay. And when we say faint, or when you said faint, I apologize, do you recall, could you make out anything other than some noise?
No.
Okay. Did you then hear further noises?
Yes.
Okay. And if you could describe to the jury when you heard a faint noise, then you heard further noise, was that like seconds later, a minute later, 2 minutes later? I know you didn't have a stopwatch, but.
Yeah, I believe I stated I can't really tell the time frame.
Okay.
It was maybe a couple minutes, maybe,
Okay.
but I can't be sure.
Okay. You weren't timing it, I gather. Is that correct?
Yeah, I don't time daily life.
Okay. And then you heard some further noise, maybe a few minutes later. What was the noise you heard later?
The same noise, just louder. Seemed like it was getting closer.
Okay. At that time, when you heard, the second time you heard noise, could you tell whether the noise, could you make out any words?
No.
Okay. Could you tell whether it was one individual or two individuals at that time?
No.
Okay. What happened then in terms of what's going on outside? After you heard additional noise, you couldn't make out any words, you couldn't tell whether it was one or two people, what then did you hear?
That's when I proceeded to go to the sliding glass door to look out.
Okay. So you literally got up from the couch, you went to the sliding glass door. Did you like open the blinds and just, or what did you do?
I cracked the blinds to see if I could see anything going on outside.
Okay. Now, are there lights, I'm assuming, inside the living quarters at that time where
Yes.
you were at? Okay.
Yes.
And are there lights outside?
There's one on the back porch.
Okay. Do you recall whether the light was on or not?
It was on.
Okay. Do you need to take a minute to get the drink?
No, I'm okay.
Okay. What I'm trying to ask is, when you were looking outside, was your view obstructed in any way, either by the interior lights inside your residence or the exterior light?
I would say the screen obstructed it somewhat.
Okay. And as best you can tell the jury, when you looked out through the blinds, let's make sure we have a good description of, when you looked out through the blinds, there, you said they were vertical, is that correct, or horizontal?
Vertical.
Okay. Did you kind of just peek through, or did you kind of move like a few, or how, describe
I
it as you can?
peeked through one. If I moved a few, a couple of them would fall off probably.
Okay. And when you looked out, tell us what you saw from your vantage point inside the residence.
I couldn't really see anything except it looked like someone or something was out there.
Okay. What then did you proceed to do, sir? If anything.
Under direct reply from my wife not to go outside, I opened the blinds and opened the sliding glass door.
Okay. So you made a fatal mistake and disregarded your wife.
Yes.
Okay.
Sure, there'll be more.
All right. I gather she was still in the living room?
Correct. She
And
was on the phone.
I'm sorry.
She was on the phone.
Okay. Was she just talking to somebody or
She was talking to a technology service group, probably. I think.
something? I mean, it wasn't related. She didn't call
No.
911 at that point. is
No.
it? Okay. So, but she distinctively told you not to go or go outside, but you disregarded her requests, commands, whatever, correct?
Yes.
And when you say you actually stepped outside, if you could demonstrate to the jury, I guess, or describe, I'm picturing a sliding glass door. Do you have to unlock it and then literally just, move it all? Or is it, describe if you could how that.
Sliding glass door, you had to pull. The screened-in part, you had to pull back. And I literally only took one step outside the door onto the concrete slab.
Okay. And when you say you took one step, or do you mean literally like you put like 1 foot in and you had 1 foot still inside?
Correct.
Okay. So you're 1 foot on the concrete, 1 foot still in the house. Are you looking at that time?
Correct.
Okay. What do you see when you look out there at that time?
It looked like a tussle. I could really only see one person, and I think I described it as possibly being some type of dog attack because there are a lot of dogs that walk in that back area, and I could only see, an object.
Okay. What then did you observe after that?
It seemed like a tussle. They were vertical to me, just like the blinds were. And then at one point, I yelled out, "What's going on?" and "Stop it," I believe.
Okay. So you watch football?
Yes.
Okay. You know how football, they have instant replay?
Yes.
I'm gonna, as best we can, try to do an instant replay with you, realizing that don't have the, anyway. My question is, you stepped outside, in terms of how long you had 1 foot out, was it seconds, was it minutes? How long do you think? it was?
Seconds.
Okay. And in terms of estimating, I'm assuming you still didn't have a stopwatch with you, correct? And your wife was not timing you at all?
No.
Is that accurate?
Accurate.
Okay. Can you estimate how long? Was it 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, 4, 5, 6, 7, or can you say?
In regards to
How long you actually, when you put 1 foot out and you were observing what you were observing?
a few seconds.
Okay. You mentioned when you put your foot out and you first saw something out there, you mentioned vertical. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
If I'm looking at someone in the backyard, they're faced directly onto the ground. So they're vertical. They're not horizontal. They're vertical to me.
Okay. All right. So they're vertical, meaning the same way you are right now in terms of like this.
So they would be making a T with the sidewalk, if that
Okay.
helps.
All right. In terms of the sidewalk that we're going to show you some photographs, how close to the sidewalk was, at that time, could you tell whether it was 1 or 2 people?
I couldn't tell at that time, no.
Okay. How close was the object, we'll call it, to the sidewalk?
They weren't on the sidewalk, but like I said, I could only see so far because it was vertical to me.
Okay. Could you make out anything other than there was an object there?
Not at that time.
Okay. And did the object end up moving?
The object,
What was on the ground? Did it end
Yes.
up moving?
yes.
Okay. And in relation to where it was first, when you first observed it, to when you described the second time when they appeared, you said horizontal. How far from the original place did the object move? We don't know persons, but how far did they move?
Not far, I wouldn't say. Just up onto the concrete.
Okay, all right. At that point, could you tell there was one individual there at least, or 2 people?
I could tell there were 2 when they were still vertical.
Okay. All right. If you could you tell at that time, in terms of describing who was on top and who was in the bottom?
I could only see colors of clothing.
Okay. The color of clothing on top, what could you see?
It was dark.
Okay. How about the color of clothing at the bottom?
I believe it was a light white or red
Okay.
color.
And are you going from memory, since you stated it was only a matter of seconds, right?
I don't understand your question.
My question is, you're not making notes as you're doing this, you're not taking photographs or anything as you're doing this,
No.
right? Okay. And so you positions changed. How long did it take for the positions to change? Was it just an ongoing process, or was there a stop, or?
It was quick because, like I said, I've only seen a few seconds of what happened anyway. So I would say 10 seconds max total for everything.
Okay, could it be as little as 2 or 3 seconds?
It could be.
Okay. You mentioned the second positioning or the change in position, if we call it, they were horizontal. At that point, could you tell there were still two individuals, the same people?
Yes.
Okay. And in terms of describing the individuals, are you able to describe their faces or anything, or just clothing descriptions?
Well, going back to when they were vertical, I could tell the person on the bottom had a lighter skinned color. Correct.
Okay. All right. And when you saw them horizontal at that positioning, who was on top and who was in the bottom?
It was the same position still.
Okay, all right. If you can describe the position of the person on top in relation to the person on the bottom.
I believe I described it as a straddling position,
Okay, and what do you mean by that?
with the legs over the lower part of the body.
And the person on the bottom, could you tell whether that person was face up or face down?
Face up.
When you first observed now you know two individuals, at that time, could you see whether the person on the bottom was face up or face down?
You said when they were vertical?
When you first saw them, when you first stepped out, could you tell at that time whether the person on the bottom was face up or face down?
When I first stepped out, no, because I couldn't see anybody.
Okay. And then at some point when you observed the second time you're talking about, you saw the person on the bottom was face up,
Correct.
and the person on the top you said was straddling, I believe you described it?
Correct.
Okay. Could you tell what was going on at that time?
I think at that time is when I thought it was serious,
Okay. What made you think that?
because it looked like there were strikes being thrown or punches being thrown. But as I clarified, due to the lighting, it could have also been, holding down.
Okay.
But there were arm movement going downward.
And the arm movements that you described, would that have been from the person on top?
Correct.
Okay. And you said that was a dark colored attire of some type?
Correct.
Okay. The person on top, if you can, you're saying arm movement, how would you describe the arm movement?
Shoulder down.
Okay. Could you see that person's hands?
Just appendages. It's
Okay.
too dark to
Okay.
see that type of stuff.
Yes, sir. The person on top, could you tell whether that person on top was actually striking, and here's what I'm gonna do, were they going like this?
I could not hear that, no.
Could you hear this?
No.
Could you tell whether the person on top was just holding the person or trying to hold the person on the bottom?
At this point, Your Honor, I would object, that's leading.
I think you stated, but your testimony in terms of whether the person on the top was holding down the person on the bottom, could you tell?
I said that could have been possible, as there was arm motion going downward, not just once, but multiple times.
Okay, so you can't say one way or the other, whether, or can you say?
I can't 100% say, no.
You mentioned you said something. Did you yell that out, or did you say please, or how would you describe it? And if you could, as best you can, recreate that in whatever tone of voice you use to say something.
That's pretty hard going back to that date on the tone of voice.
Okay, was it loud?
It was enough for that I thought they would be able to hear me.
Okay,
Yes.
and again, what do you recall saying to the two individuals?
At first it was what's going on, and no one answered. And then at that point I believe the person on the bottom I could finally see, and I heard a help. And then at some point I said, cut it out, and then I'm calling 911. Is that when I thought it was getting really serious?
Okay, and when you're stating what you're saying, are you doing that pretty quickly, or are you pausing like you are now?
I would say pausing,
Okay,
and I think that would equate to about the time that I said to.
okay, but you're yelling it or saying it loud voice so they can
Yes.
hear? You mentioned that when you first stepped out, I neglected to ask you, at that time, did you hear any kind of yelling at any time from one of the two individuals out there?
Not initially when I stepped out.
And when you did step out and you said something, did any of the individuals, prior to you saying something, did you hear any of the individuals saying something at that point?
No.
Okay. And you mentioned that they said something. Was that after you said something to the individuals?
Yes.
Okay. Could you say unequivocally to this jury who was saying something?
100% no.
Okay. And why is that?
I'm just taking it off of being rational.
And you believe the person on the bottom would have been saying something when they observed you?
Correct. And if it was coming from on top, it would have echoed off a wall instead of coming directly at me.
But can you say unequivocally that it was the person on the bottom versus the person on the top?
Sorry, Your Honor, that would be asked and just answered.
Overruled.
Can you say unequivocally that it was the person on the bottom versus the person on the top that was saying help?
Not 100% no.
Okay. And in regard to the person that said help, if you can, the person that said help, was it help, 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 continuous, or was it, or how would you describe it, more than one?
I believe it was just one or maybe two.
Okay. And then after that, what happened?
That's when they moved up onto the sidewalk.
Okay. At that point, what happened?
That's when I saw them in the straddle position, thought it was getting very serious, and said I was calling 911.
Did you then turn around and go back in?
Correct.
Did you close your sliding glass door?
I probably didn't care about the sliding glass door.
Okay. Did you call 911?
Yes.
Okay. As you are turning around, I guess, and going back inside your residence, or I shouldn't say turning around, just putting your foot back inside your residence, are you hearing any screams or yells for help from outside there?
At that time, my adrenaline was going. I can't remember.
Okay. You know, I neglected to ask you something at the very beginning. When you first heard something and then you stepped outside, the TV, was the volume still going? In other words, did you mute it or did
It was muted.
Okay. The light that you had on outside, did it remain on the whole time, or did you turn it off when you stepped back in?
No, it remained on.
Okay. When you stepped out, you mentioned two individuals that you've described. Did you see anybody else out there?
Not at first.
Okay. At some point later on, did you see individuals?
At the very end, after,
Yes, sir.
yes.
When you are stepping outside and you said something, did you notice any other neighbors or anything, even if you didn't see them outside? Did you notice anybody like peeking out or anything, from any of the windows, or were you paying attention to that?
My focus wasn't on that.
At the point where you're seeing the two individuals, one on top of the other, and I think you described a straddling position, can you see the person on the bottom, their hands?
They were at a side view, so I don't think so.
Could, by that, could you tell whether the person on the bottom had a gun out already?
No,
You can't say one way or the other?
I can't tell, no.
Sir, I'm going to play the 911 recording with the assistant, Ms. Waldrop.
Any objections?
No, Your Honor.
911 unit, please fire medical. Police, I just heard it.
I apologize. I neglected to put on the record what the exhibit number is. For the record, that is State's Exhibit 162.
911 unit, please fire medical.
Police, I just heard a shot right behind my house.
Where at?
1221 Twin Trees Lane. They're wrestling right in the back of my porch.
You just heard one shot go off?
It was either that or a rock at the window or something. I don't know. The guy's yelling help, and I'm not going outside.
Okay, 1221? You said 1221.
No, 1221 Twin Trees Lane, Sanford, Florida. 1221 Twin Trees Lane, Sanford,
Is
Florida.
that one or two words? Because it's not accepting it.
Twin Trees is 2 words.
Okay, and you can hear somebody yelling for help?
I'm pretty sure the guy's dead out here. Holy shit.
Okay, we have several people calling in also. Anything else that you heard?
No. The guy yelling help. Oh my God. No. There's a guy with a flashlight in the backyard now.
Okay.
I think there's flashlights and there's a guy.
Okay.
I don't know if that's a cop. Oh my God.
Okay, I have several calls, and you just heard. You sure? Did you hear when you heard voices? It was just one person talking, right?
There's two guys. There's two guys in the backyard with flashlights.
Okay.
And there's a black guy down that looks like he's been shot and he's dead.
Okay.
He's laying, and there's multiple people calling right now, I'm thinking.
Okay. I have several officers going out there, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, bye.
Mr. Good, you recognize that being your voice?
Unfortunately.
Okay. You mentioned that somebody with a flashlight, is that what you were saying, that later other individuals appeared, is that correct?
Yeah, it looked like people came around the corner at some point.
Okay. I want to go back to the what you described out there, and I think you described straddling position. And is that because of the posture of the person on top versus the person on the bottom?
It's both, yeah.
Okay. At some point, you also used the word or descriptive words as MMA style. Do you recall saying that?
Yes.
Okay. And did you mean by that what, sir?
As a straddle position like that.
Okay.
It's a common position you would see in a...
So is that like MMA is like mixed martial arts? Is that correct? Do you watch that on TV and stuff, or?
Not recently.
Okay. But when you say that, are you referring to just the position the person on top had over the person on the bottom, or I don't want to put words in your mouth. What do you mean by MMA?
And the actions of the arms
Okay.
just looked like something that I'd seen on TV before, so that's why first thing that came to my mind.
Okay. Could that also be referred to like wrestling, that type of thing?
I don't understand your question.
My question is, did you ever see the person on top pick the person from the bottom and actually slam them into the concrete?
No.
Did you ever see the person on top slamming the person on the bottom's head on the concrete over and over and over?
No.
Did you see at any time the person on top grab the person on the bottom's head and slam it into the concrete?
No.
Sir, back when you were living in that residence back in February of last year, I believe Ms. Lauer also used to live there. Is that correct? She was your next door neighbor?
Correct.
And at some point, I believe in a deposition, you actually heard the recording that 911 call that she made where there's cries for help.
Yes.
Do you recall that?
Yes.
Prior to that deposition, had you heard that recording?
No.
Okay. And at that deposition, when you heard the recording, did you make an observation as to whether you felt that was a different cries for help than the ones you heard?
Audibly, it didn't sound the same as what I heard outside.
Did not sound the same. Thank you. Sir, I'm going to show you some photographs, and hopefully, with the court's permission, may I publish those to the jury, Your Honor?
Yes, you may.
First of all, State's Exhibit number 1, and again, I'm going back to February of last year, so hopefully you've remembered. Do you recognize this? I guess it's a Google photograph, aerial photograph of the retreat of Twin Lakes?
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm going to, as best I can, blow up an area. You were living at this residence right here, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And the backyard we're talking about in the sidewalk, or I think people have referred to it as dog path, would this be it right here?
Yes.
Okay. So is the area that you're talking about, am I circling it right here?
Yes.
Okay, and for the record, that was State's Exhibit number 1, and I've just emphasized a part of that exhibit. Sir, I'm showing you now State's Exhibit number 6. Can you make out your backyard on that exhibit, sir?
I guess.
Okay. Would this have been Miss Lauer's residence and your residence is right here in the backyard?
Yes.
Okay, or the back sliding glass door?
Correct.
Okay. I neglected to ask you about the conditions in terms of the weather that night. February 26, 2012, at around 7:05, 7:10, 7:15 p.m. Is it safe to assume that it was dark at that time, sir?
Yes.
And do you recall the weather condition in terms of whether it was raining, snowing, or what was going on?
Definitely wasn't snowing, but it was very nasty outside.
Okay. And nasty meaning the rain and et
It
cetera?
was raining off and on all night.
Okay. Stage Exhibit number 7. Are you able to tell there what we're looking at?
Yes.
Okay. And from this vantage point, would this be the, I guess, the dog receptacle that I'm circling right here?
Yes.
And this would be going towards, your residence would be over here to this side somewhere?
Yes.
And I say your residence in terms of back in February of last year, the backyard, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Stage Exhibit number 33, this would have been your residence right here back in February of 2012, and this would have been Ms. Good's residence?
Incorrect.
Okay. I'm sorry, tell me what Stage
You
Exhibit
said
30
Miss Good. We don't live in separate homes.
I meant Miss Lauer. I apologize. I don't want to get you in trouble with your wife now. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that. Miss Lauer's, excuse me.
Correct.
Okay. And for the record, the street address is right there in the front of that residence, correct? 1221?
That's not the street address. That's
I'm
the
sorry,
number
the
of the
numerical
home.
address to the residence.
Yes.
Okay. And for the record, that is Twin Tree Lane, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Waldrop, I've messed up the exhibit. Oh, thank you. I'm going to show you now Stage Exhibit 39. Do you recognize that photograph? And I realize it's a daytime photograph.
Yes.
And the backyard we're talking about, is this right here?
Yes.
And can you see, I guess, do I have the cursor or the arrow in what have been your sliding glass door, the blinds you're talking about?
That would be the one on the left, actually,
Okay.
if that's what you're referring to.
Yes, right, okay. And okay, all right. And this would have been Ms. Lauer's back porch at that time, back in February of last year?
Correct.
Okay. That's all the photographs I had of you, but I do need the assistance of Madam Clerk. We have an exhibit, the big diagrams that are in evidence. I don't think they're out here. We may. Do I need to get them from somewhere? Okay. May I have the court's assistance, Madam?
Yes, you may.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Mr. Young. May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes, you may.
Mr. Good, I'm going back to February of last year. I'm State Exhibit 139. Did you live at right here at 1221?
Yes.
Okay. And in terms of this exhibit, State's Exhibit 139, back in February of 2012, when you lived right here at 1221, there's a depiction of a person there. Is this about the area where you're describing you saw?
Beginning or end?
Tell me if using this, just kind of point where you, in the beginning and the end, that as best you can recall when you observed something in there and then went back inside.
Yes.
Okay, all right. And you mentioned concrete. Is this the sidewalk we're talking about?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Good, you went back inside, called 911. At some point, do you hear a gunshot?
Yes.
Okay. Do you recall whether that was before you called 911, doing the 911 call, or after the 911 call?
I believe it was while it was dialing.
Okay. In terms of how long, do you know how long it took you to dial? Did you do it? I mean, did you run to your phone and grab it, or did it take you a minute? Did you say to your wife, honey, I did go outside, sorry? Or do you recall how long it took?
Oh, she could see me. No, it was probably right inside. I usually keep my phone next to me.
Okay. And do you believe the 911 call, I'm sorry, the shot was while you were dialing, or you were actually on the line?
When I was on the line waiting to get picked up, correct.
Okay. If I may have a moment, Your Honor. When you went back inside and you heard a gunshot, prior to that, did you hear any more yells for help at all?
I don't think I was even focusing on that.
Okay, you were just focusing on calling 911?
Yes.
Okay. In terms of I think you stated 3 cries for help or 3 statements of help when you went outside and there was 2 people there?
I think I stated 1, 2 maybe.
Oh, okay, I apologize.
Could have
1
been
or 2.
possibly 3. I don't know.
Okay, don't want you to guess, but you're definite 1 or 2.
Yes.
Was it all one voice or was it more than one voice?
It sounded to be the same voice.
And you're not able to identify that voice, or are you able to identify it?
Not 100%, no.
And to make sure the record's clear, what you heard when you looked out there and saw the 2 individuals and you heard one say help, did you only hear help, help, or did you hear anything else other than help, help?
That's all I heard.
Thank you. I have no further questions at this time.
Thank you. Mr. O'Mara?
No, my cross will probably be as long as directed. You know, if this was a time for a break, or just wait until I'm done with cross. I need a few minutes with exhibits, but up to the jury. I
Up to
guess.
the jury. Does anybody need a break at this time? No?
Okay.
We'll wait.
Maybe a couple minutes for some
Sure.
exhibits. And I'll be ready. Morning, sir.
Morning.
Don't really want to be here, do you?
I guess it has to be done.
Sure. You were very reluctant to be involved in the case at all, correct?
Correct.
Had only been one of the witnesses who requested that your anonymity be continued because of your concerns about your involvement in the case?
Correct.
You understand that though we were able to accomplish that up until today, or I guess openings, that we couldn't do it because of the way the process works.
Correct.
still willing, of course, as you are, to come here and tell us as best you can recall what you said and what you saw both that night and what you told other people, correct?
Yes.
Let's then talk about that night, and Mr. Delarondo walked you through it. I want to try and do it after defining some of the terms that you used to make sure that it's very clear. You're watching TV, correct? And
Yes.
you first hear some noise outside that gets your attention, correct?
Yes.
And I think you said that was sort of this noise or yells or something, wasn't it?
I didn't say yells.
What did you say? I'm sorry.
I just said a noise in the distance.
Okay. May I first look at tomorrow? And just to orient both you and the jury, I'm going to look at this from behind you. It's been identified that you live here, correct, or lived there back
Correct.
then. And that I think you said the noise came from as you're looking out which way when you first heard the noise.
When I first heard the noise,
Yeah.
I wasn't looking out, so I couldn't tell which way it came from.
Could you tell at all from what direction?
Just that it was faint and seemed like it was getting closer.
Okay. Could it have been from this area, for example?
I thought we weren't speculating.
I'm just asking what your opinion is. It could have been.
Objection calls for speculation.
Sustained.
Okay. So that got your attention enough that you turned off or muted the TV, right?
I muted the TV, correct?
Okay. And then what was the very next thing that caught your attention?
I heard it again, but it seemed like it was getting a little louder.
Could you
which
tell at that point where it was coming from?
It just seemed like it was getting closer
Okay.
to where I was.
And in response to that, what'd you do?
That's when we muted the TV again, and I proceeded to the sliding glass door.
So there was a time in between the two where you turned the TV down because of the first noise, turned the TV back on.
Yes.
And do you recall about how long of a time that was between the two?
No.
Could you have said previously that it was maybe a couple of minutes?
Well, you were wanting a time frame, so yes.
No, it's okay.
Yeah.
I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you had said it was a couple of minutes, right?
Sure.
Okay. Does that sound about right still?
I guess. Like I said, we weren't keeping track of time, so it
Sure.
could have been a couple minutes.
All right. And then the next noise got your attention. You muted the TV again, and what else did you do?
That's when we muted the TV and I went to the sliding glass door.
Okay. And looked outside, and I want you to say again what you saw, but then I'm going to ask you to break a little bit along the way because I want to define some terms, okay? So when you first looked out after that second noise, what did you see?
I couldn't really tell what was out there.
Okay. Tell us as best you can your view and what it was.
Like I said, I couldn't tell what was actually out there, so that's when I opened the sliding glass door, opened the screen, and took a step out to see what was going on to get a better view.
Okay. And tell us what you saw.
It looked like I said, maybe possibly a dog tussle, but I could only see one person out there at that
Okay.
time.
You used the terms vertical, horizontal, and I want to just sort of clarify those so that we're on the same page. I'm going to use horizontal as being laying flat on the ground. Okay?
Well, that's your perception of it. If you're looking at them, that would be horizontal a different way.
Okay? That's why I want to clear it up. I'm going to suggest and see if we can agree for this conversation that horizontal would mean that they're laying on the ground flat. I'm not saying anyone was yet. We'll get to that. But that the term horizontal means basically you are laying on the ground flat.
They were laying on the ground.
Okay. And then vertical would be, as I am now, standing up vertical. And we'll get to some more in a minute. But right now, can we agree that I'm standing up vertically?
Correct.
Okay. With that in mind, as best you can, describe the scene that you saw from your perspective. And first tell me about how far away this was that you were looking at.
It was closer to the sidewalk, but not on the sidewalk.
Okay, about 15, 20 feet?
I guess, yes.
Okay. If the sidewalk was about 20 feet away from your porch to the sidewalk was about 20 feet, would that be close to accurate?
20 feet from the slab of concrete on my porch
Yes.
to the sidewalk?
Yes.
I guess.
Okay. Let's use that for now, and we'll see how we can tie that up in a little bit.
Okay.
About how far then, was it about that 20 feet, almost to the pathway or the concrete path?
Yeah, it was close to the sidewalk.
Okay. And again, tell me now, using the terms we've agreed to, what was it that you remember seeing?
They were laying on the ground, and if you fell back vertically, that's how I would be looking at them.
So if I was on my back vertically, that was one of the people?
That was how I could see it. But
Okay.
the one on that I could see in the beginning, his back was towards me, but facing downward.
Okay. Well, let me say it like this, if I might approach it somewhat. The person that you could see, you said you saw his back.
Mm-hmm.
Was he like this?
At the beginning, no.
Okay. How was he? And just sort of point me how he was when you first saw him.
You'd have to go all the way to the ground.
Over more. Like that?
No. It was more just flat on flat.
Okay. So one person horizontal on top of the other?
Correct.
Okay. And then when did that change?
When it moved up to the sidewalk.
Okay. So as we now move closer to the sidewalk, what is the positioning of the two, or what you see?
It happened very quick,
Okay.
but that's when it was at more of a straddle position once it got onto the sidewalk.
And when you say straddle,
Mhm.
can you explain that in more detail?
Do we get another
If you wish.
visual?
Sure.
No, I'm okay.
Let's try it this way, but I want to do it so not just you get to embarrass me, but the jury gets to see it as well.
No, it was more just the person on top's legs were over the person's on the bottom that was laying flat on the ground.
Okay. So now the person on top is in fact like this over the person on the bottom?
I would say that's accurate.
Okay. And the person on the bottom was laying flat?
Correct.
Could you tell if he was on his back or not?
He was on his back.
He was on his back. At this point, what's the person on the back wearing? I'm sorry, the person on the top whose back you can see wearing.
It was the same person that was on the top when they were T-shaped to the sidewalk.
Okay, so they
So
did
dark
not.
colors.
I'm sorry. They did not change positions, did they?
No.
Except one, the one on top in the black, actually instead of laying down on the guy on the bottom, was now straddling him, correct?
Correct.
And they are now closer to the cement pathway, correct?
They would be on the cement at that point.
On the cement. And what movement were you, I want you to sort of walk us through that, but at the point now, tell me when your focus of attention is really on what they're doing. Is it at this point with the straddling?
Well, it was on the entire time, but like I said, it was only probably 8 to 10 seconds from what I remember because it was so quick.
You
But
had
when-
said, I'm sorry, you were saying?
But when they were on the concrete, the position was with arm movement going downward.
From the time that you were first stepped out to watch them until the time you turned back around was about 8 to 10 seconds, correct?
I would say because it was very quick.
So
it
8 to
wasn't-
10 seconds?
Yeah, it wasn't a long time. No.
Okay. Mr. Delaround asked you if it could have been as little as 2, and I thought you said yes, but it was a lot more than 2, wasn't it?
I didn't state the entire thing was 2 seconds. No.
Ah, let's do that then. The entire time that you were actually watching what was going on,
8 to 10 seconds
8 to
probably.
10 seconds.
Yes.
And that's when you had your focus specifically on what turned out to be, as we now know, Trayvon Martin and George Zimmerman, right?
Correct.
You didn't know it then, but now we know who they were.
Yes.
So 8 to 10 seconds you were watching them do whatever was happening.
I would say yes.
Okay. And you were talking about a movement or a struggle that you saw. Tell me more about that. What
At
did
the
you
beginning
see?
or the end or the whole thing?
Beginning, at the beginning.
Like I said, when I walked out, it looked like it was only one person. Then I could see a second person, and it looked more of just a tussle. And that's when I thought it got serious, when it moved up to the sidewalk and he was more in a straddle position and arm movements were going downward. But I couldn't 100% say those were actually strikes or if they were just arm movement going downward.
Of course, because you are trying, as you testify here today, to be extraordinarily literal, aren't you? Be very careful that what you say is only what you saw.
Well, that would have been through the whole thing because that's the same thing I said in a deposition.
Sure. And even in your initial statement, when you first had an opportunity to talk to an officer about this, the very first time, you explained as best you can recall what you saw, right?
Correct.
And what you saw was the person on top in an MMA-style straddle position, correct?
Correct.
That was further described, was it not, as being ground and pound,
Correct.
right? What is ground and pound, as you
That's
define
usually
it?
what takes place in that type of position.
Sure. So MMA, to the extent that you're aware of it, and MMA is mixed martial arts,
Correct.
you knew it enough to start giving terminology like ground and pound to what you saw, right?
It was the first thing that came to my mind, yes.
That the person on top was ground and pounding the person on the bottom?
That's what it looked like, yes.
So, explain what ground and pound is in your mind.
The person on top being able to punch the person on the bottom, but the person on the bottom also has a chance to get out or punch the person on top. It's back and forth.
Sure. And which is the dominant position?
It would be the top position.
Because why?
For most people, that would be the dominant position.
Because you're on top of the other person, right?
Usually that's a positive, I would think.
Sorry, it distracted me a bit, so I want to make sure it didn't distract the jury, and I apologize for that. So I'm going to go back, even though I know that you answered it, I didn't fully absorb it. So let's just start by telling me again what ground and pound is.
It's usually when the person's on top in a mounted position, I believe, in the dominant position. But like I said, the person on the bottom is able to, get out of that position or, throw punches back. But I did not see any of that.
Okay. The dominant position of being on top is because you actually have all of your weight on the person's hips, right, holding them down?
Correct.
And from that position, the person on the bottom really can't move very much and can't get very much movement or very much leverage, can they?
I guess that depends on the type of person that's on the bottom.
Sure. And how well trained they are in MMA, right?
I don't know if you have to be trained, but I'm sure some other things come into play. I don't know.
Okay. Yet the person on top in that dominant position then has his arms free, right?
Correct.
Might have the person on the bottom's arms actually under his knees in that position, right?
What objective speculation versus at the scene or MMA in general?
Well, at the scene, speculation sustained as to MMA, I think you need to lay a better bracket.
Sure. I mean, you've watched MMA fights enough to know what ground and pound is, right?
Sure.
And in certain ground and pound positions, they can actually, the person in the dominant position on top can actually get the guys in the bottom arms under his knees so that he virtually has free access to rain blows down upon him, right?
Well, I would think that would mean his arms were above his head or close to his head, but no, I don't know.
Okay. Nonetheless, the person on top has his arms free, correct?
Correct.
And in this, now let's go to this case that night that you saw. The person who you now know to be Trayvon Martin was on top, correct?
Correct.
And he was the one who was raining blows down on the person on the bottom, George Zimmerman, right?
That's what it looked like.
Okay.
Correct.
Now, and I said a moment ago you were literal because you couldn't actually see fist hit face, right?
No.
Because it was blocked by what?
I didn't say it was blocked. I said it was dark out.
Okay. And you were looking at Trayvon Martin's back, right? Wasn't that what was towards you?
Incorrect.
Then
On
tell
the
me what it was.
sidewalk, they're side to me because they're laying on the sidewalk, which would be going lateral to my
Oh,
house.
that's right. When they
Or
time,
parallel.
by the time they got up to the sidewalk, they had sort of moved into a position where it was a little bit more you can see what would have been George's left side or right side?
It would have been his right arm.
Okay, his right arm was towards you, and then Trayvon Martin's left side would have been a bit more towards you, right?
Correct.
And then that's when you saw him striking down?
That's when it looked like, yes, arm movement going downward. Correct.
How many times do you think, if you had
I
to
have
guess?
no idea. As soon as I saw the movement going downward, that's when I turned around and went back inside.
That's when you knew it was very serious?
Yes. it looked like it was getting serious, and it wasn't just someone playing around.
And that's where you can hear George Zimmerman screaming for help, right?
Incorrect.
What was it? When was it?
That was in the beginning when I finally saw someone under the person on top.
And I apologize for not asking the question the right way. When was the first time that you heard the person on the bottom scream for help?
When I initially went outside, didn't see a second person, then I could see a second person, and it sounded like it was coming from the person on the bottom, because usually when someone's on top, the person on the bottom is the one screaming or yelling. And that was when I heard that, but I didn't hear anything after that.
Okay. And balancing, you're trying to be literal and just tell us exactly what you remember observing and using your common sense. Do you think that it was the person on the bottom who was screaming for help?
I mean, rationally thinking, I would think so.
Okay. Matter of fact, I think you said in response to Mr. Delarounde's question, had it been Trayvon Martin screaming for help, since his back was to you, it would have had to be going, the yell would be going away from you, and I think you said it would have to bounce off the wall before you heard
I mean, I
it.
think it would sound different.
Okay.
That's why in my head I thought it was coming from the person on the bottom.
And the sound that you heard was sounding like a person screaming from 15 or 17 feet away, almost directly at you, right?
It sounded like it was coming towards me, correct.
Okay. Now, and I'm sorry to jump back to that. I apologize. So they are now moved up. They're now in the true ground and pound position. And Mr. Delarounde, I think, made some histrionics about what you heard and what you didn't hear. So I now have to do it as well. Okay? Did you hear something like this?
No.
Okay. Could something like that have happened without you being able to hear it?
Objection, speculation.
Sustained.
Were you paying attention to the noise of the ground and pound that you were watching?
Probably not.
Okay.
I was just seeing to make sure if it was serious or not, and that's when I went back inside.
Okay. Have you ever heard the sound of a skull being smacked against concrete?
I can't remember.
Have you heard the sound of a fist driving into a nose or a head or a face?
I can't remember.
So while it wasn't the histrionics that Mr. Delarounde suggested, it certainly could have occurred that Mr. Trayvon Martin was hitting Mr. Zimmerman, but you just don't remember today the sound of that?
Objection, speculation.
Sustained. Rephrase your question.
Sure, I'll rephrase it. You're certainly not telling this jury that you're certain that Mr. Martin wasn't striking George Zimmerman in the face, right?
Can you repeat that?
Yeah. You're certainly not telling this jury that you know that Mr. Martin was not striking George Zimmerman in the face. You just
I
don't.
can't 100% confirm that that was happening.
Right. And you just don't want to say that Trayvon Martin was taking George Zimmerman's head and hitting it on the cement because you didn't actually see that, correct?
Yeah, I couldn't see that.
Okay. And it was because of the darkness and the positioning of the people?
Yes.
Okay. You, of course, have testified during your deposition and other times regarding what you heard and the disparity or the seeming disparity between what you remember hearing and what the 911 call seems to indicate, right?
If you're referring to the call you played in my deposition, yes.
Yes. It just doesn't seem like the same screams to you, does it?
Well, one's coming from an audio and one I was hearing in person, so it didn't sound the same to me.
So
no.
you perceived them differently than you heard on the 911 call, correct?
Yes.
You're certainly not suggesting to this jury that they're not the same screams from different perspectives, are you?
I couldn't say.
Okay. You are aware that Ms. Lauer's call to 911 was timed perfectly with the screams that she heard and, of course, the gunshot that you heard, correct?
What do you mean?
Okay. You heard the gunshot, correct?
Correct.
And you've also heard that gunshot on Miss Lauer's tape, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So going back in time from the gunshot backwards on Miss Lauer's tape, you heard on Miss Lauer's tape that there was probably 40 seconds worth of screaming that was recorded on that call, correct?
Objection, it's a speculation in terms of the time.
He can testify if he knows.
Sure.
Can you repeat the question?
Sure. You remember listening. I tell you what, here's what we'll do. If we might just have a moment, I'm going to let you listen to Miss Lauer's call again. And I want you, when you're listening to it, I want you to think through. I will tell you that 45 seconds into the phone call, you're going to hear the gunshot.
Mm-hmm.
So be ready for that, because I want you to then testify what you remember seeing sort of in timeline with when you remember hearing the shot. Okay?
I wouldn't be able to tell you.
I'm going to let you hear the tape, and
Okay.
then we'll go from there. If I might have a moment to set that up, Your Honor. Just for the record purposes, Your Honor, I'll identify the exhibit number in just a moment. This is, of course, the evidence of Ms. Lauer's telephone call that's already been put in evidence.
It's number 158.
Thank you very much, Your Honor. If you're ready. Sure.
911, do you need police, fire, medical?
Maybe both. I'm not sure. There's just someone screaming outside.
Okay, what's the address that they're near? Is this in the Twin Lake Towns in Sanford?
Yes.
Okay, and is it a male or female?
It sounds like a male.
And you don't know why?
I don't know why. I think they're yelling help, but I don't know. Just send someone quick. Say stop.
Okay, does he look hurt? Do you?
I can't see him. I don't want to go out there. I don't know what's going on. So they're sending him.
So you think he's yelling help?
Yes.
All right, what is your number?
There's gunshots.
You just heard gunshots?
Yes.
Okay. You heard the gunshot towards the end of what the recording?
Yes.
Okay. And I know, again, from different perspectives, but with your knowledge of the information of this case, that was the same gunshot that you heard from inside your house?
It didn't sound the same. It sounded more like a rock hitting my window because I was inside.
Of course. But I'm saying with your knowledge of the case now and your testimony here, you know it was the same gunshot, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And it sounded much different from across the street, if you will, across the pathway and inside Miss Lauer's apartment, correct?
Correct.
You didn't hear your voice on that tape, though, did you?
No.
You obviously did say what you said to them, correct?
Correct.
And the mere fact that it doesn't show up on the tape doesn't suggest that you didn't say it, does it?
I know what I said.
Okay. Just wasn't recorded on the tape.
You're also talking about someone that's probably inside their house, and I'm
Sure.
around
Not
the corner.
challenging you, I'm sorry. Not challenging you. Ms. Lauer said she heard you as well. I'm not challenging what you said or not, just that it wasn't on the tape. Using that gunshot as a reference point, I want to sort of take you back in time just a little bit. Just before the call, a few seconds before the call, is when you turned around and went back inside your condo or your townhome? Is that accurate?
You said a few seconds before I made the call?
Before the gunshot? So using the gunshot as a point of reference, because you remember hearing the gunshot when you were dialing 911, correct?
I was inside, correct.
Yeah. So I'm trying to go backwards in time, if you don't mind me trying it this way. So you know the gunshot that you heard here was the gunshot that you heard, correct? Let's just go back. And when that gunshot happened, you were on the phone to 911. Or
I
just
was waiting
dialing?
for someone to pick me up,
Okay.
correct?
And then, of course, we heard your 911 call that says, just heard a gunshot.
Correct.
So your 911 call starts after the gunshot, correct?
Correct.
And it was only a few seconds before that gunshot that you were outside looking at the two individuals in the ground and pound positioning.
Correct.
You are certain, are you not, that it was the person on the bottom who was yelling to you?
Not 100% certain.
I'm sorry?
Not 100% certain. But it did sound like it was coming from the person on the bottom.
So when you say not 100%, I just want to drill into that a little bit. And again, knowing that you want to be literal and very cautious with what you testify to, but using your common sense, when you were listening to the sound of the yelling, where was it coming from?
It sounded like the person on the bottom.
And was it coming as though it was coming straight towards you, unobstructed?
I would say yes.
Could you relate any of those two helps, or how many helps did you hear?
It could have been 1, 2, possibly 3. I think it was only a few.
Okay, just a few. Could you relate those, now that you've listened to this tape, where that you may have heard those yelps or helps on this tape?
No.
The yells that you heard, however, or the helps that you heard, however many there were, it was always the same voice, correct?
That I personally heard?
Yes.
Yes.
There was no second voice yelling anything, was there?
Not that I heard.
And when you ran outside, or when you went outside that time that you went out to your porch, you actually told him to stop, right?
I said, "What's going on? Cut it out. Stop,"
Cut it out.
something like that.
Okay. And the person who we now know to be Trayvon Martin on top didn't stop, did he?
No one stopped.
He didn't even acknowledge that you were there?
I don't remember seeing anyone turn around.
Did he turn and look at you even?
No.
He just kept doing what he was doing,
Yes.
even though you asked him to stop.
I guess I asked him yes.
Mr. Delarianda asked you about a gun. You never saw a gun, did you?
No.
There wasn't a gun in anybody's hands that you could see, was there?
Not that I could see.
Did it seem like Mr. Zimmerman was trying, I'm talking now about the period of time where the ground and pound was occurring, the straddling. Did it seem like Mr. Zimmerman was trying to get up?
I didn't watch it long enough to even be able to tell on that. I might have stated when they were in the other position, it possibly looked like that, but not in the sidewalk part.
Oh, okay. And I, again, truly do appreciate you focusing on what you said and when you said it. But when they were one on top of the other before Mr. Martin got into the straddle position, that's when it looked to you like George was trying to get up, George Zimmerman was trying to get up?
Yes.
Okay. And how was he doing that?
Well, there's a person on top of him. I didn't think he wanted to stay on the ground.
Yeah, I'm just trying, if you would, for the jury to describe how it was that you saw Mr. Zimmerman trying to get up from the position with Trayvon Martin on top of him.
I couldn't tell you how he was trying to get up.
Can you just describe it for us?
What do you want me to describe if I can't tell you what it looked like?
Just trying to visualize for the jury what it was that when you said, the guy in the bottom trying to get up, what you meant by that.
Like I said, if a person's on top of you, you're not wanting to stay on the ground. So once again, rationally thinking, I was thinking the person on the bottom would be trying to get up.
And did you see any movements by George Zimmerman to accomplish that? Or was it just sort of a struggle that you saw him trying to get up? Which
I
one?
couldn't see anyone when I first went out there until he slid out from where I could actually see him a little bit. And that's when I knew it was a second person, and that's when I figured the person on the bottom was trying to get up.
When was the first time that you noticed Mr. Zimmerman's clothing?
Just as I just stated.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Just as I just stated right before, in that very initial.
Okay, and then you could see that he was wearing red?
It was a different color than the person on top was wearing, yes, red or white.
So, going through now for a moment your statements and who you first spoke with and when. You first had an opportunity to speak to, do you recall the first person that you did?
And what do you mean by speak to? First
Or write out a
statement?
statement or do
That
anything?
would have been the police.
I'm sorry?
That would have been the police.
Okay. And you recall filling out a handwritten statement yourself?
Yes.
And do you perceive any inconsistencies in your testimony today and what you wrote out on the statement?
I would say the only thing I did was clarify,
Today?
or in any other statements that I had from that first one.
Okay. You were consistent back then that it was a straddle position where the person on top was straddling the person on the bottom in red, and the person on the bottom was getting hit, was yelling help, correct?
But I didn't mean to say that they were yelling help while they were getting hit.
Okay,
That was clarifying, and also what was being done was clarified.
gotcha. And then you also talked to Investigator Serino,
Correct.
and that was that same day?
Later that night.
Okay. And you gave him an oral or recorded statement, correct?
Correct.
And it was in that statement the same day that you described the straddle position as being an MMA style, correct?
Correct.
And it was that very night when the words ground and pound first were talked about, correct?
Correct.
And then you also talked to the media, actually found you out, didn't they? I think next day or two.
They came to my house every day and pretty much harassed us for the next 6 months.
And until you realized, I guess, that you could close the door and not answer it, you actually answered one door knock, and they sort of had a reporter there talking to you with you behind the door. Remember that?
That was the next morning, correct?
Mm-hmm. And similarly, you told them the same thing that we've talked about here today, right? The guy on the bottom in the red was getting beat up?
Correct.
And also, as well, saying that at that point that he was yelling for help.
Correct.
Then about a month later, FDLE, John Batchelor, spoke with you at an extended interview where he went over the same information.
I had another interview in between that with Serino again.
Oh, you are right. Again, except for clarifying what was happening, no inconsistencies with the story that you gave the first night, correct?
Just clarifying.
And then we get to John Batchelor's conversation.
Correct.
He went into greater detail, correct, about what happened?
Excuse me?
He went into pretty good detail with you about what happened?
In detail of what happened from my point of view? Because
Exactly,
he didn't know.
yeah.
Yes.
He had to explain a lot about it.
Yes.
And again, everything in there you still stand by and was consistent with what you've told us here today and every other statement you've given, correct?
Yes.
Tell me why you initially thought that this just, tell me why you initially thought that this may have just been a dog fight of some sort. Why did that come to mind?
Like I said, we have a lot of dogs that get walked back there. Maybe a dog got loose. I have no idea. It was Daytona 500 weekend. People were probably partying.
Any problems that you have actually in the neighborhood with dogs or dogs getting loose or anything?
Nothing out of the ordinary from just getting off the leash, maybe.
I have a moment to approach the clerk, Your Honor. Number 4. Let me show you what is in evidence as State's Exhibit 45. You can take a look at that for a moment. Do you recognize who that is?
No.
Okay.
Now I do. Not at the time.
Right, at the time you didn't. That person, is that the clothing that you saw that night?
I can't say it's exactly the clothing, but it was definitely a red or a lighter color.
Okay. Does that red seem like the color red that you saw on the bottom that night?
Possibly.
Okay. Just one more moment, Your Honor, almost done. Just have a moment to put it again, just to identify this photograph. Rather than wasting time, Your Honor, what I think I'll do is show it to him, not publish it to the jury until I identify the number, just so we can clarify that. It's in evidence, I just can't find the number just yet. I might of course the witness, Your Honor.
Yes, you may.
I can take a look at this. I actually do need to mark this one now that I'm about to show it to you. Defendant's double E for identification purposes for right now. And can you tell me, is the clothing that that person wearing similar to the clothing on the person who is on top?
The person on the right, yes.
Okay, so yeah, certainly not the 7-Eleven clerk. I apologize. The person on the in the center of the photograph.
Correct.
Person to the right. Similar clothing to the person that you saw on top on night of
Same
February
colors,
22nd?
yes.
Thank you. enter that into evidence, Your Honor. I would not mind suggesting there's no objection. I mean, if there's no objection.
Is there any objections?
I have no objection.
Okay, that'll come in as Defense Exhibit 18. And that's double E.
Yeah, I'd like to quickly call this to the jury if I might. During your interview, you had actually prepared a sketch of what you saw that night. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Okay. Any objection to just putting this in as evidence? It's simply a blow-up.
This is his.
That's
No objections?
No, I apologize. No objection, Your Honor.
Okay, it'll come in as Defense Exhibit number 19.
Again, may I approach the room?
Yes, you may.
Can you identify this as a blow-up of a sketch that you prepared?
Yes, it's my horrible stick figures.
Okay, well, in addition to not knowing how long you've been married, now we know your artistic abilities, but let's do this if you would. Explain to the jury what you intended to do with this sketch and then tell us what it depicts.
What I tried to do is say where the door in the house that I came out of was, where they first were, who was on top, who was on bottom, and then where it moved to.
Okay. So to clarify, this is your patio area,
Correct.
and this was what your perspective you were looking out at this scene here first?
First, correct.
Okay. This scene really belongs here, just later in time? Is that
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a progressive,
right?
supposedly supposed to be a progressive
Right.
picture.
So this is what you're looking at from here to here first,
Correct.
and from here to here second,
Mhm.
although this path is actually the same path, correct?
Correct. And then the third one is where, away from where I saw him on the second part, the body ended up.
Okay, so tell me the legend, if you would, and explain what you were indicating with this.
This is depicting them laying how I was stating earlier, the one on the black top on top and the one on the red and white on bottom.
Okay,
And then it moves to the sidewalk, laying this way,
okay.
with still the person with the black shirt on top and the red shirt on bottom.
Okay, is this now where they're in the straddle position
Correct.
with Trayvon Martin on top?
Yeah, I could not draw that.
That's fine, but I just want to orient the jury to that's what we're talking about, right?
Yes.
And then tell me what this number 3 is right here.
3 is when I went upstairs while I was still on phone with 911 and looked down, and the body was, I don't know, it's not in the same position that I left him in.
Right, you left them in, they were more closer and actually had part of their bodies on the cement pathway, correct?
They were on the sidewalk, yes, and then the body was closer to where I was,
Right, and
After.
so when you looked out from, did you look out from upstairs?
upstairs.
Then you saw Trayvon Martin's body, correct? Between the pathway and your complex, your townhome.
Correct.
Okay. And I see you have, again, a stick figure. Have you seen the photographs taken of Trayvon Martin as he lay just after the shot?
I do not believe so.
Would you defer to do you know did you see anyone move the body at all?
I
after
think
you saw
believe
it?
I saw him flip him because he was laying face down,
Okay.
flip him over and try to give him CPR.
So when you first saw him from upstairs, he was laying face down.
Correct.
Did you see the other person?
He was on the sidewalk,
Okay.
standing up.
Okay. Did you see anybody else? A man with a flashlight?
That's when
right?
the guys from the flashlights came around the corner.
Okay. So, from the time of the gunshot, when you were just on the phone calling 911, to the time when you looked out to see Trayvon Martin's body in the position you just described it, and George Zimmerman, I think you said walking about how long was that delay?
I don't know. I'm sure if you splice the phone call, you could figure that out to the T.
Okay, so if we were to look at your phone call, you sort of acknowledge having just heard the gunshot, correct? And then you also acknowledge, I see someone outside, correct?
Correct.
And that's about the timeline that you would say was accurate as to
That's when I'm walking upstairs. Yes.
having heard the gunshot, walk upstairs. Tell me, if you would, I'm sorry. Tell the jury, if you would, you hear the gunshot when you are dialing 911, then tell me your movement until you get to an area where you can see Trayvon Martin's body.
It was a walking movement upstairs as I was trying to spell out twin trees 3 times. And when I finally made it to the bathroom area is when I looked down because we have a window, and that's when I saw the body.
Okay. I'm just going to ask you to do it a little bit slower. Were you actually still on the staircase when you were dialing 911?
I was possibly heading up at that time
Up the staircase?
when I finally got a hold of him.
Okay.
Her.
Continued walking, got out. Did you go into one of the back bedrooms?
The master bedroom.
And is there a balcony or some window out there?
There's a window in the bathroom and a window in the actual room.
And which window did you look out?
I believe it was the bathroom window.
Okay. Again, it is what it is, but could have been one of the 2 windows.
I believe it was the bathroom window.
And we will defer the exact timing. Do you remember when you were on the phone with the 911 operator that you said something acknowledging that you had just seen the body at the time you saw it?
I don't understand the question.
Yeah,
Can you
I
repeat it?
just kept rolling on. I apologize. If we're going to listen to the 911 tape, on that tape, there's a time when you say, there's somebody outside and I think he's dead.
Mm-hmm.
Was that the precise moment or very close in time to when you saw the body you just described?
That's when I looked down.
And you saw it?
Correct.
So we can defer to the tape then for a pretty much exact time delay between the shot and when you saw the body.
Not the exact time the shot was fired, but from when I stated I just heard a shot when I was on the phone with him, yes.
Got it. I might have a moment. Yes, Then just to clarify the last thing we talked about. You look out and you see Trayvon Martin's body. And then you said you saw George Zimmerman walking about, correct?
Standing, walking, yes,
Okay,
but on the
sure.
sidewalk.
And then you also said you saw 2 guys with flashlights?
I think it was 2 guys with flashlights coming around the corner.
Okay. Could you tell, in fact, that one of them was an officer?
No,
Okay.
I just saw a flashlight.
Because again, at this point, it's still quite dark out there, correct?
Correct.
I couldn't tell if you said that your porch light was on.
It was on.
Okay. Was it on the whole night?
Yes.
Okay. And it's one of those porch lights that point down, correct?
It's a light bulb inside of a globe.
Right, above, in the ceiling above.
Correct.
It's not one of these lights that illuminate the outside area,
It's
correct?
not a floodlight, no.
Okay. Does it illuminate outside of the porch area at all?
Maybe just a little bit.
A few feet?
I would say possibly, yes.
Certainly not enough to increase your ability to see what you've now talked about happening near the pathway, though, correct?
No.
And the voice screaming for help, however many times that you heard it, it was just one person's voice?
When I heard it outside,
Yes.
I believe it was just one person's voice, yes.
And you now believe that that was George Zimmerman's voice, correct?
I never said that.
Do
I
you
said
believe?
it could have been his, but I was not 100% sure.
I'm not asking for 100% certainty. I'm asking you to use your common sense and to tell us if you think that that was George Zimmerman's voice screaming for help, the person on the bottom.
That's just my opinion.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Thank you. Have you read it right?
May I approach a witness, Your Honor?
Yes, you may.
I may borrow Mr. Guy's water, and may I borrow your water too? When you first saw them, sir, you saw like this, right?
Correct.
That demonstration, is this what we're talking about, right?
Correct.
You saw one person on top of the other.
Correct.
You don't know how they got there, right?
No.
The second time you saw them, one was on top of like this, but this person on top was straddled,
Correct.
right? But the feet were definitely, from your vantage point, to the right, as you drew in the diagram right here.
Feet, yes.
I apologize, yes, sir.
Heads were towards
The heads were towards the T.
correct.
Is that correct?
The T of the sidewalk.
Yes, I apologize. The T is the sidewalk, correct?
Correct.
Okay. I apologize. Let me give you back your water. I think I got the right. You were asked about statements you gave, interviews you gave. Forget about the news. You originally talked to an officer, right, at the scene
Correct.
that night. Then you ended up talking to a detective later on, correct?
Correct.
And then you ended up talking to somebody from FDLE, correct?
Are you going in order of all the times
I
I
think
spoke
I've
to
got that
someone?
right. Well, I'll skip the news right now.
Okay.
Right, you talked to somebody from FDLE.
I believe I did another interview with Sereno on the phone as
I
well.
apologize. Serena on the phone, right? And then you ended up at some point talking to me, and I took a statement from you, too.
I went FDLE, then you, yes, correct.
Yes. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And would it be fair to say that certain questions were not asked of you at the beginning that were asked later on in the later interviews?
New questions, correct.
Right?
Yeah.
In the first interview, you were not asked to elaborate on certain things that later on at the end you were asked to elaborate, correct?
Correct.
In other words, nobody had asked you before whether you heard this, correct?
No.
And I asked you that, correct?
Yes.
And you did not, for purpose of the record, hear that, correct?
No.
In fact, what Mr. O'Mara said, not getting into, but he actually pounded on his cement here, you did not hear that either, correct?
No.
Now, one of the interviews I believe you gave with Sereno, Mr. O'Mara asked you about ground and pound.
Correct.
Do you recall that? Could it be that it was investigator Sereno that used the words ground and pound and not you?
I believe it was me because it was in my initial statement as well.
Okay. So you initially, in the original statement to the officer, put ground and pound?
Possibly.
Okay. You know, I'm going to show you this, and may I approach a witness, Sean?
You should have it marked for an identification exhibit. Yeah, we need a paper change here. It's for identification. It's marked for identification purposes.
Okay, I've seen it. Yes, thank you.
May I approach a witness, Sean? To show you what's been marked for identification purposes, 25.
It should be 2S.
I'm sorry, 2S, I apologize. Just read it. And to see if you use the words ground and pound there.
Is the proper impeachment, Your Honor? I don't know if that's what's
don't
going
know.
on, but,
I don't know if it's impeachment or recollection.
okay.
Is there an objection?
I withdraw it then, until we see where it goes.
I say ground getting hit.
Okay. But would you agree that in that interview with the first officer, you did not use the words ground and pound?
It wasn't an interview, it was a written statement.
I apologize.
So by the time I probably gave my testimony to Sereno, I might have thought about that's what it looked like to give a better description.
Yes, sir. And you believe that you used the words ground and pound in the better description to Sereno, is that correct?
I believe that's better described, yes.
Okay. So you elaborated a little bit more from the
Yes.
first, correct?
I
And then you
clarified.
elaborated a little more in deposition too, correct?
I clarified,
You had to clarify certain things, would that be accurate?
yes.
And why was it? You felt it was important to clarify certain things that you had previously said or
To
elaborate?
give a better visual.
Okay. Now, let me have a moment, Your Honor. I apologize. I'm going to ask you a few questions, then we'll come back to that if we could. The porch light, just to clarify, it's not on the ceiling, it's actually outside and it's attached to the wall, but it's high up.
It's like right at the catty corner of the ceiling and wall.
Okay. But it illuminates out into the yard.
I wouldn't say out into the yard, but it definitely illuminates that patio area.
The concrete slab.
Correct.
Okay. I'm going to have another object, marker notation. 2-2. You mentioned an interview you gave to Sereno. And that was on February 26th,
Would you
2000.
just, I'm sorry, would you just identify the document?
Yes, ma'am.
I would just,
I'm going to introduce.
I think that if there's going to be any questions about this, I would ask that the audio be used as the impeachment or refreshing, and the reason why is because,
Okay, I don't,
Oh,
if
sorry.
there's an objection, I need to hear the objection. And I don't do speaking objections.
okay, so I'm going to be
So-
precise. Improper foundation.
Okay. He hasn't even had it identified. Can we wait for that? Don't answer any questions regarding that, but if you need him to identify it, you may do so. Yes.
Let me ask you this. I'll be glad to clarify it. You gave an interview with Detective Sereno, right?
Correct.
Okay. You used the word MMA, you
Correct.
recall? You believe you used the word ground and pound.
I believe so.
Could it
If
have
not,
been?
I did say getting hit on the ground, which would be
Okay.
equivalent in MMA as ground and pound.
Okay. Could it have been that Sereno used the word ground and pound?
It could have been.
Okay, thank you. But you, as best you could, in elaborating what you believe was going on there, used language based on MMA, what you had seen on TV and stuff like that.
To give
Correct.
a better description. Yes.
Is that correct?
Correct.
To describe the straddling position, one person over another.
Correct.
Okay. Did you mean to imply by that that there was actually blows inflicted like they do on MMA?
Correct.
But did you actually see those blows going?
I only saw downward movement.
You can't say that there was actually blows inflicted on the person on the ground.
I could not see that.
Okay. You also were asked about the one, two, or three times you heard the word help.
Mhm.
You believe it was the person on the bottom. Is that correct?
I believe
You're
it
not
was.
100% sure, but you believe just because of, you believe that the person on the bottom would be the one yelling for help.
Correct.
Is that what your conclusion or common sense or assumptions is based on?
And that's when I first saw the person on the bottom, yes.
Okay. Now, and you said also, because I think if you felt the person on the top was yelling for help, that it would not have been, you would not have come towards you, in other words. The voice would not have carried towards where you are, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So could it be that the person on top was yelling help, and since he was face up, face down, it would have been towards the ground and not you?
I would object on speculation.
He can testify as to what he has actually seen.
I didn't see anyone's mouth moving, so no, I can't confirm that.
You can't say that the person on the top was yelling for help, but his voice would have gone into the ground and you would not have been able to hear that. You can't say he wasn't yelling for help.
Well, that would have sounded muffled, I would think.
But did you hear that?
I didn't hear a muffled help. No.
Okay. And you never saw the person on the bottom's hands in terms of whether he had a gun or not at that time? You couldn't say?
No.
You couldn't say one way or the other, correct?
No.
And did I understand you correctly when you responded to Mr. Romera's question that you can't say whether the person at the bottom was trying to get up, correct? You can't say whether he was or not. He may have been. You don't know. And the
I
person-
stated the person on the bottom was probably trying to get up, but I couldn't confirm that. But anyone on the bottom, I would think, would be trying to get up.
Just from common sense.
Correct.
Correct?
Correct.
In the several statements that you gave, I know you gave several statements, I guess you felt the need, or you weren't either asked questions to specify certain things that you later were asked, correct? Is that
Correct.
correct? By the investigating agencies or whoever, correct?
Correct.
Or you felt the need that you needed to clarify or elaborate on certain things. Is that correct?
Yes, so words weren't put in my mouth, yes.
Does that mean that you were lying originally with what you said to the final statements that you gave?
Can you repeat that?
Does that mean that when you had to clarify or elaborate from the original statement you gave to the final statements that you gave, that you were lying originally?
Lying?
Yeah, does that mean that originally you were lying?
No.
Because you didn't clarify or you didn't elaborate, does that mean that originally you were lying because you weren't asked a certain question?
No, it was just the question was omitted.
The question was
never
never
asked.
asked of you?
Correct.
I don't know how moment. States Exhibit 7 is, may I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes, you may.
Mr. Good, you mentioned at the very end of, or towards the end of Mr. Romera's cross-examination, that you had gone upstairs, and I think you stated you looked out and you saw what you now know is the victim, Trayvon Martin, on the ground. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then at some point you saw the person you now know is the defendant, standing up, correct?
Correct.
And then you saw one or two guys with flashlights.
Correct.
Is that, do you remember that?
Yes.
Okay. Let me show you State's Exhibit 77. You recall when you looked out, Mr. Martin being like that?
No, it was opposite view, so I would be looking the opposite way. But Yes, the body did look like that.
The body looked in this position?
If
In other
I
words-
was standing over there looking that way, yes.
Okay. My point is, the body was face down.
Face down, yes.
Your Honor, may I publish that to the jury?
Yes, you may.
And Mr. Good, just make clear, State's Exhibit 77, your vantage point would have been different, but the body was in this position, in other words, face down.
Correct.
And you talked a lot about MMA. Are you MMA trained at all?
I don't think I'm in shape to do that now.
Okay. And do you know whether either Mr. Zimmerman or Mr. Martin were MMA trained at all?
I didn't know either people.
Thank you. No further questions.
Just a few on the new areas that we're going to.
Do we need, anybody need a break? Yes, okay. Can we,
It's going to be about 5 to 10 minutes, but no more
Can
than
you
that,
wait?
but your call.
okay, go ahead.
You can wait.
I'll talk to the jury, not you. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm sorry, Ron.
Thank you.
If I could have this marked here. You marked it, you know?
Yes.
Okay.
It's State 2S.
Objection to moving into evidence?
Pardon?
Objection to moving into evidence?
Yeah, it shouldn't be moved in evidence. It was to clarify so he could read it.
Well, okay, may I approach the witness?
Yes, you may.
Is this a copy of your statement given that night, most contemporaneous with what was happening?
Yes.
Is that the document that you were questioned about as far as what words you used and how you wrote down what you perceived at the first opportunity that you had to perceive it?
I wasn't questioned about it, but I was given it to write a statement.
Okay, and that is accurate, is it not, as you wrote that night?
From what I saw that night, yes.
Okay, I would move this into evidence, Your Honor, as our next exhibit.
Standing objection, Your Honor.
Okay, please approach.
good for the delay. The statement that you gave to Chris Serino, the Chief Investigator Serino on this case, that was correct as best you could remember the incident the way you viewed it, right?
Correct.
Now, as you went along the way, I think you gave 4 or 5 statements altogether, right?
Probably.
Yeah. They were all somewhat different, would you agree?
What do you mean different?
No, they weren't exactly word for word, each one of them, were they? I think Mr. Delarianda said you would clarify certain things, correct?
Yes.
Add to what you thought needed to be added, correct?
Add but not change.
Sure. You would, if questions were asked of you, that would prompt you to tell more information about a subject that you may not have told before, correct?
Correct.
Matter of fact, we talked about this statement, not to show it to you to read, but just for the size of it. It was only half a page written, correct?
Correct.
And then you had a statement with Serino that was a page and Chris Serino, investigator, that was page and a half, correct? It was actually
I think it was audio.
telephone and it was transcribed. Then you had another one with FDLE that was much longer, correct?
Correct.
And all of those statements included some facts that were added to one or just not added to the other, correct? Just because of the way the questions were being asked?
I don't know about facts, but
Okay.
they needed more clarification.
Sure. And then, of course, we took your deposition, and I think that was 50 pages or so, correct?
Correct.
And again, we asked you questions, and you just answer the questions as best you can.
Correct.
And Mr. Delarianda wanted to make sure that the jury understands that just the fact that you have statement 1, statement 2, statement 3, and statement 4 that are not all exactly the same, you weren't lying, were you?
No.
Okay. You were just answering the questions that were being asked, right?
Correct. Some had more than the other ones, yes.
As best you could remember of that event back then, correct?
Correct.
And you even said that the adrenaline was flowing, wasn't it?
Yes.
It was an event where you sort of hyper-focused on what was happening once you realized it was serious?
For a few seconds and turned and went back inside, yes.
Sure. Called 911, not something you do every day, right?
Well, after that, yes, but yeah.
Okay. And it was really sort of a traumatic event for you to go through to see what you saw enough to call 911, wasn't it?
It was enough for what I saw to call 911, yes.
Okay. So as you recounted the story time and time and time again, things became more expanded as you were asked those questions?
Yes, but I believe the groundwork stayed the same.
Sure. The groundwork, that you saw 2 guys outside your house, one was on top beating the other one up. That pretty much stayed consistent, didn't it?
Well, that I clarified that I could not actually see punches, but yes, it looked like, yes.
Right. And the
Back to my
guy with the
clarification.
red, I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
Back to clarifying, yes.
Yeah. And the guy with the red was always on the bottom.
Correct.
That never changed.
That
did
never
it?
changed.
And just to clarify what was actually talked about with Chris Serino, Investigator Serino, during this, what we're going to call it for a moment, the ground and pound conversation. We have a rule called completeness. So what I want to do is put it in context for you and ask you if this is what you said to Chris Serino, okay? Yeah, I pretty much heard someone yelling outside. I wasn't sure if it was, a fight or something going wrong, so I opened my blinds and I see kind of like a person out there. I didn't know if it was a dog attack or something, so I opened my door. There was a black man with a black hoodie on top of the other, either a white guy or now I found out I think it was a Hispanic guy, with a red sweatshirt on the ground yelling out help. And then, I tried to tell them, get out of here. Stop or whatever. And then one guy on top in the black hoodie was pretty much just throwing down blows on the guy, kind of MMA style. Was that the context in which that happened?
Yes.
And then Investigator Serino said a word that I have, and the transcripts may differ, ground couldn't figure it. Maybe he said ground and pound. And then you said, yeah, like a ground and pound on the concrete at this point. So at this point, I told him I'm calling 911.
Improper bolstering.
I'm at the end of it.
Uh,
Is that,
What, there's an objection, and the objection is?
Hearsay and proper bolstering.
I would suggest that Rule 108, which is the rule of completeness, suggests that since they brought in part of it, and I'm speaking, I apologize.
The objection is to hearsay is overruled. Bolstering is not the right objection either, so that's overruled.
Beyond the scope of cross-examinations to that
Overruled.
point.
Overruled on that objection also, go ahead.
That's what you said, right?
You're speaking about the whole thing, yes.
Yeah, and that was the context in which the words ground and pound came out?
Yes, for more clarification.
Okay. And do you stand by that today, that what you saw was a ground and pound event?
It looked like that position was a ground and pound type position, but I couldn't tell 100% that there was actually fists hitting faces.
But you did see the guy on the top of the black hoodie pretty much just throwing down blows, and the guy kind of MMA style.
Meaning arm motion going down towards the person on the bottom, correct?
Because you're not going to tell the jury here today that you saw a fist hit flesh on face if you didn't actually see it, right?
I wouldn't tell them that anyways because I didn't see it.
Great. Thanks very much. No further questions, John.
Any redirect?
Not to elaborate, but the thing that Mr. O'Mara, that document or the transcript of it, the bottom line, you needed to clarify it after that to make sure that everybody understood that you did not hear or see fist, the guy on top hitting the guy on the bottom. Is that correct?
Both sides made me clarify.
Is that correct?
Correct.
You did not see blows on the guy on the bottom, correct?
Correct.
Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you. May Mr. Disney excuse?
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you very much. You
Yes,
are
Your Honor.
excused.
He is under subpoena for today. If I might, with this hour, I would like him to stay so that I can talk to him at lunch.
Okay, you're excused from the courtroom, but if you'll please remain outside in one of the witness rooms so counsel can speak with you. Okay, thank you. Do we know if their lunch is here? Okay. I'm hesitant to take a break and then send you to lunch, so and I don't want to start a new witness. No, so I was going to send you back there, but you'll have to wait till your lunch gets here. It'll be a very short period of time. So I don't know. The lunch would be here at noon. On the internet by using any type of electronic device to do independent research about the case, people, places, things, or terminology. And finally, you're not to read or create any emails, text messages, Twitters, tweets, or blogs, or text messaging about the case. Do I have your assurances you'll abide by these instructions? Okay, and with that, if you'll please put your notepads face down on the chair and follow Corporal Dennis outside the courtroom. Please be seated. Counsel, is there anything we need to take up before we recess for lunch?
No, Your Honor. Thank you for the additional time for Mr. O'Mara and I to do what we need to do.
Okay, thank you. Court will be in recess till 1.